Hey, Toothers, it's just me again. Today's been kind of a rough day. Just annoyed with, I don't know, existing, like being awake. That's politically, but politically, it's pretty bad too. I've seen the economy start to get worse thanks to Trump's disastrous attempts to, I don't know, make a deal, force a deal, try to make America more money like it's a business. Oh, I said it before, but for all the people that thought the country should be run like a business, welcome to hell. Yeah, it's not what I'm going to talk about. And I don't even know why I'm bothering with this topic necessarily. It's just my algorithm's pretty messed up. I get things from things about esoteric religions and occult practices. I get history. I get some comedy. I get some new stuff, and I get some the worst examples of the MAGA cult. Well, maybe not the worst, but certainly the least informed of the MAGA cult. And there are a couple topics that were on my mind last night. I couldn't sleep. I was going through this whole thing in my head about, if I decided to start going to school board meetings, I would tear into them about it. And these are just the things my brain does to help me process information. I do find it easier to think about it as though it is a conversation, a discussion of some kind. I mean, yeah. I mean, my writing style is largely how I would talk to people, but with editing. So if I could back up time and be like, all right, that's not. Let's pretend I didn't say that. Let's say I said it the right way. Well, the two topics that come to mind are sex ed and CRT. Why? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why these two go together, but it's two of the topics that have come up a lot around education, around public education, around, what should they be teaching kids in schools? And again, I have a reason for it, but, in terms of the given topics, there's the, we shouldn't be teaching CRT in schools, and there's an appropriate time and place for sex ed, and it should be largely in the home. And to tackle that topic first, because I think it's the easiest one, I think that we always end up talking with kids about sex at some level, right? When they're in daycare, when they're going to the doctor, when they're in kindergarten, right? It's all about what's appropriate touching, who's allowed to see your bits, right? Your no-no spot, your no-no zone, whatever your kids are calling it. I still call mine junk because I hate the medical words. Friends kind of ruined that for me, just in general. I think they're both kind of obnoxious words just to hear. Am I going? Oh, sorry. What was I talking about? Yeah, so hugging, even hugging. Sure, we do make them hug relatives a lot, which I understand, and I also don't. Because not everybody wants to hug all the time. I understand trying to train kids to see, all right, your grandparents are probably fine. But they don't always want to hug, and I don't know that making them is necessary, but I'm also not telling people that they shouldn't have their kids hug relatives or whatever. My daughter's a hugger, my son is not. I still hug him because it annoys him, and I think it's hysterical, so I keep doing it, but again, it's still teaching them about consent at a young age. They start learning this at a young age. Why we stop telling them this, why we have allowed in this country for things like sexual assault. Up until what? When was rape? When was marital rape considered illegal? I forget if it was the 80s or like 94. I don't have it in my brain right now. But it used to not be illegal to rape your wife. in the United States of America. How fucking disturbing is that? Oh my God. So, and as they get older, they learn. I mean, they probably learn stuff from friends or like an older sibling or whatever, but, um, health class, they learn about more of the details, more about procreation, all that hoopla. They learn more about their bodies because it's changing. Because when you're younger, I mean, there's not a lot going on for a while, right? There's still that consent. There's still, playing doctor with the neighbor kid is probably not a good idea. Wait till you're at least older, right? Wait as long as you can, I suppose. But abstinence only teaching is not proven to be unhelpful. It doesn't work. Like DARE, like the DARE program, drugs doesn't work. Spend a lot of money to not really convince kids to say no to drugs. It's abstinence doesn't. Prohibition is a perfect example of how abstinence does not work. Just say no isn't quite as simple as it sounds all the time. And that's a different, darker road to go down that I don't want to go down necessarily. But, and then there's this, all right, so there's a lot of the pushback with sex ed, of course, is around trans people and, gay, lesbian, but the whole collection of people who are not heteronormative are apparently a problem. I don't agree that they're a problem. I think that the book bannings that I have read about have been wildly overblown and incorrect. They have had instances where they said these, certain books are not allowed or shouldn't be allowed around children, which I can understand and accept. But the books themselves were in a library at a high school. They weren't around middle schoolers. They weren't around grade schoolers, right? I think allowing people to know that there are people out there who are inclined towards the same gender romantically is not a problem. I don't see how that's a detriment to people to have that knowledge, right? And people that do not feel at home in their own bodies. I think I've talked about that before. I've talked about trans people several times. I understand the confusion, the lack of understanding that situation, how obscure it seems, and how it can feel off-putting because it's so not how we ourselves exist or live our lives that it can be disturbing to some extent. But that doesn't mean that it's a problem, right? Some people like cottage cheese. I think that's disgusting. I don't want to legislate against cottage cheese. It just doesn't make sense. And honestly, this constant scapegoating and this BS of, well, if they're not heteronormative, then clearly they're pedophiles. Yeah, that's not true. I don't know how many stories I have to provide to people that it's even by and large religious people that are more inclined towards that. At least those are the ones that I read about. I'm sure there are plenty of people that are not, that have that direct access to children, like the Catholic Church for a really long time, having this stuff go on, or other organizations. The Boy Scouts had their own scandal. There are elements of people who maybe they're trying to deny what they are and they can't, or maybe they're trying to get access to kids. It's really unfortunate and disturbing. And look, this is the reason why. So one of the other arguments that you hear about this sort of discussion on the right with the left, of course, is that, well, they say it's biological. So if it's biological, if it's a natural urge, why should you care? Because you have no morality, because your morality only comes from God. First of all, eat shit. Second of all, there's a huge difference between consenting adults and non-consenting children. They're non-consenting adults as well, don't get me wrong, but that's a different term. Children cannot consent. They are not emotionally prepared to consent. And anybody who tells you differently is full of shit, right? If they're telling, and I don't care what group they're a part of. I don't care if they're trying to justify the prophet and his marriage to a 6-year-old girl that he waited to consummate till she was 9. I don't care if it's fucking NAMBLA. I don't care. I don't care if you have a child who's an old soul. That doesn't mean that they can consent to this event. It's not how it works. I have kids and I've known people who have been abused as children, and it fires me up. It's one of the few times that I'm definitely pro some form of state-sponsored murder in the name of justice. I think there's a difference. I do think there's a difference between being biologically attuned in that direction versus acting on it. I think acting on it is when the line gets crossed. Having that urge, that inclination, it's not good, and it's a shit card to be dealt in life. But there should be ways to mitigate it or keep yourself away from that level of temptation, because it's all victims. There is no consent. There is no agreeable relationship with those situations. Now this is a darker turn than I expected. So anyway, I think the arguments against people who are not heteronormative are largely bullshit. Because you're gay doesn't mean you are or you're not something. Because you're straight doesn't mean you are or you're not something. Like that, the two are not related. And when they go into college, they can advance their studies further on a more biological level and get down to, the nitty-gritty of what these things look like and how they function in great detail. If they want to be an OBGYN or, both of my kids were conceived through IVF, right? So I would not have children without that process. It's a process that the Republicans want to take away, because they have this weird, obnoxious sense of life begins at conception. Like if you want to get super technical, every living cell is alive. So, unless we're scratching dead cells off of our skin, if we really want to protect life, we got to go like a full-on hyper Buddhist level and not even step on bugs, right? You're not pro-life. Nonsense. You're pro-birth. You're pro-make more babies. You don't care what happens after they're here. You only care that they're born, which I'm not going to pretend isn't a cool thing to think, but it's not the full reality of existence. And it's also a punishment to force people who are incapable, who might die, right? I mean, the stories that are coming out because of the abortion ban, because of what the fucking Supreme Court did, have been horrible. I mean, more women are dying because of this, because doctors are afraid to perform life-saving abortions. Even if it's a stillborn child, even if the child's already dead in the womb, they're having trouble sometimes having that dealt with. This denial of I hate using the umbrella term science because it feels like such a buzzword, but reality, this denial of reality, like these are things that are actually happen. These are the things that are actually required in order to make a child, blah, blah, blah. These are things that can really happen. These are the problems that can be had. These are the reasons why we should do this. And, yeah. And look, don't get me wrong, right? I do, listen, I'm struggling with the whole idea of when is a fetus a person, right? The whole idea of personhood around that identifying term. And first of all, I'm sorry, second, third, 12th of all, right? Late-term abortions do not happen unless there is a medical need. Oh, and by the way, this whole thing about children being killed after they're born, it's called infanticide, and that doesn't happen. in hospitals, right? That's still considered murder. There may be a rare story that may pop up about it, and yeah, sure, one is too many. But those same people are also pretty pro-death penalty. So which is it? Pro-life, pro-death? It's nonsense. But when does the child get rights? And sure, that's an interesting question. I heard recently someone suggest that when they're born, right? Because until they're actually out of their mother's womb, parasite is obviously a derogatorily sounding term, but they're living off of their mother. They're not living on their own. They're not able to breathe on. They're not able to live outside of that womb yet, or they are not living outside of that womb. They may be born prematurely, and they have to survive on, um, you know, mechanical ventilation and all the things that have to go into helping a preemie exist, which is, again, thanks to science, thanks to technology, thanks to progression in education and knowledge, and not thanks to prayer, thoughts and prayers. So where was I going with this? So yeah, I'm a little fired up about some of this stuff. There's a bunch of the protests going on about Trump and Musk and all the bullshit that's happening in our oligarchy. I'm sorry, in our well-established oligarchy. We've been treading this water for a while now. We've just decided to finally dive in the deep end because we're apparently wildly ignorant, and it angers me. Yeah. So all that, not aside, but I guess so. All of that really just brings me that if we aren't educating our children and how to look after themselves and look after their situation and have a clear understanding of what happens and what can happen, could it decrease the overall birth rate? Maybe. Is it going to help prevent the amount of lives that are unnecessarily brought into the world, that are unhappily brought into the world, that are brought into the world and have to live a life of pain and torture? Yeah, it should help. Do I expect it to go away entirely? Do I expect this kind of problem to go away entirely? No, I don't, right? Globally, we're still having issues. We're still seeing problems. We're still seeing an uptick in certain Islamic countries about maintaining their women as less than property. You would at least show off that you got a book, right? Hey, look, I got a book. Here's the cover. And here's the words inside. With the woman, oh no, I can still see her eyes. No, that's a problem. I should know it's a woman because she's covered up entirely, and that should be it, right? These are the things that I'm seeing videos from Islamists indicate how important that it is, and how I saw one video recently of a woman shaking the hands of her husband's friend, and it went on too long, and he smacked her and went back to hugging him like he did nothing wrong. Like anything wrong happened. There's too much obsession with religious fundamentalism and with trying to build a society around religion, to build a government, to enforce laws, to enforce ideologies across wide swaths of the community, and because it gives them power. Not because they care, because it's relevant. I don't think Trump knows what a Bible looks like. Remember the picture that he took where he was holding it upside down? He could give a shit. And for a lot of those other ones, it's performative. They don't care. It doesn't mean anything to them. If you want to live in a purely religious country, yeah, go to the Middle East. Find an Islamist state that you like and move in. And tell me what you feel about religion running a country. Yeah, we could go back to having the King Charles be the head of the Anglican Church. Or wait, is he already? I forget. We can mix politics and religion and just watch the world collapse around the sheer stupidity. I still struggle with let people have their faith, and if this is the direction they're going, no, it's a detriment. I think it goes back to one of the things that I did learn in the church, is that legalism is a problem. Naturally, the church was also kind of legalistic, but in the sense of trying to enforce throughout your existence how you should live, but saying it's all because of the love of Christ that I'm requiring you to think this way and to live this way, and not like, hey, it's a good It's a good guidance. It's a good guardrail. Something I'm working on right now are guardrails, right? There are commandments, right? We're all familiar with 10 Commandments. Bertrand Russell came up with his own Decalogue, which is his own kind of 10 Commandments, which I have to review again. But I'm coming up with something that I would refer to just as just guardrails, right? Like, look, these aren't commandments; they're just things to think about. Because honestly, commandments, laws, right? These are, look, if you look at the legal system in the United States, how many things are a product of statute? They're a product of case law. They're a product of these ideas being challenged in court and having to be updated, having to be rectified, having to be changed, having to be resolved, reviewed, understood. These Supreme Court justices who consider themselves originalists may as well just say that they're racists who want to have slaves, right? I mean, that's originalism. We're going to go back to the beginning of this country, have slaves, but be deistic, right? You're not Christian. You're at some level largely Abrahamic God. But they didn't want that enforced purposefully because they saw the damage that it was doing in England. And, not for nothing, if I were to look at it like a business, they wanted to attract more people to come here, right? I mean, yeah, they just had slaves, but more people with money could show up, which would have been good for the country. God, this has gone way off the rails. Speaking of guardrails, God damn it! Oh, my eyes are dry, it's bugging me. Probably shouldn't be driving and rubbing my eyeballs, but this is my reality. Oh, I guess I can turn. Son of a bitch. Drive without my glasses for a while, which I can do. It just feels weird not having them there. Yeah. So gender as a construct. I mean, the only time that male and female kind of matters in the procreative process is during the procreative process, and you're either providing the sperm, or your sperm's getting hit with an egg, or I'm sorry, sperm's hitting an egg. They're getting hit by a sperm. I can't think instead of the stoplight. No, you're one part of the category or the other, right? You're one part of the process or the other. That's it. Even then, things like artificial insemination, right? IVF. We have developed ways to help people who want to have kids, and for one reason or another are unable to. You still need those base components, but we have different ways to make that happen. We're not trying to carry on our family lineage by having sex with our fathers like they did in the Hebrew scriptures, when incest was apparently not a problem because sin wasn't as big an issue then. That's why there are. That's why Methuselah lived for almost 1,000 years, because sin hadn't permeated the world yet, and definitely hadn't permeated him. You just stop and say some of the stuff out loud and wonder why you still have these things being preached as reality. We still have people who consider these elements to be historical fact. I do. I definitely do. This wasn't meant to be an anti-religious tirade either. But it's tough. It's tough when this topic comes up because they're largely the ones bringing the argument. And they aren't largely having a conversation because they aren't accepting what the reality is. They aren't accepting that what they're seeing and that they're claiming is a heartbeat is cellular activity that can be detected. That can be detected at a level that makes it seem like, oh, well, the heart grows first. I don't think the heart grows first. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up again. The point is, that's just a heart. It's not a person, that's a heart. And I'm not saying that all doctors are above reproach, but by and large, the Hippocratic Oath, it's pretty important to them. And, there's an unborn potential child in a person who's already alive. Who wins in that argument? I gotta say it's the host. I gotta say it's the one carrying the child. Their life takes priority. Now, if they decide that their life shouldn't, that it's one or the other, and they decide that it should be the child, well, we're not talking about abortion anymore. Remember, we're talking about sacrificing your life to save the life of your child. And you know whose choice that is? Not yours, not the government's. It's the person carrying that child. I'll call their mother, fine, I don't care. I'll probably call them the mother. They want to call themselves the father? I don't care. I don't live their lives. I don't know their lives. It's a title. It's not my life. And it's not creating a harm to myself, to other people, to society, that we need to legislate that. And you know who definitely shouldn't be legislating that? Men. If you are a ball bag with a ball bag trying to tell people who have the uterus and a womb and can carry a child how they should or should not carry a child, unless you're their fucking doctor, sit down. Oh, God, I really wanted to jump into critical race theory too, because that's another hot topic, but I guess I had a lot more to say about this other topic than I anticipated. There are police cars and fire trucks just in the middle of the road. That's not reassuring. Do I think we should protect children? Yes. I grieve thinking about the loss of the innocence of my children when the world finally shows up or shows to them its true face. It upsets me to think how that's going to break me, to see them understand that suffering. I don't know how I'm going to handle it. I mean, I'm going to be there for them and do what I can, but I think about this stuff. So it's not an accident, it's an ambulance, unless they move that vehicle already. That is a shame. I think we have to really understand that there are... all right, look, I don't think that we should get to a point where you can have an abortion at a drive-through, but it's still between, the mother, right, the one with the womb, and their doctors, and whoever they feel should have an opinion on the subject. If it's the father, the sperm donor, their parents, the drunk aunt who's been there, right, that's up to them. It's not up to legislators. It's not up to a bunch of grumpy old white men whose faces look like their testicles. It's not up to that. Well, I guess I'm done for now. I mean, there's probably more I could go into in a longer tirade, but this really turned on me. I was really going to talk about almost like a progression of what it would mean to have some kind of education around sex, which, I mean, it's already documented. There's already professionals that can explain that way better than I can. And I should probably read more papers before coming up with a conclusion or my own, opinion. But my uneducated opinion in that respect is, we teach kids about consent at an early age, right? They start to understand that boys and girls are different, and they think it's funny to make fun of each other on that. I mean, they make fun of each other on everything. So this is nothing new or additional. My hair looks terrible. They're going to think I'm insane. Oh, wait, I am. I forgot. I am insane. And when your body starts changing, you start learning about why it's changing and what that all means and how that interplays with the other people. And, you start to understand that, hey, I'm horny. Yeah, what am I horny for? Who am I horny for? Like, what does that mean? What am I going to do about that? Should I do anything about that? It's not this big scary thing. It's not this, we're not teaching kids how to buy BDSM gear when they're in elementary school because they like holding the dog leash and like, hey, well, if you like that, people aren't doing that. That's not happening. If they are, those people are sick and twisted and need to be put away or put down in some respect. There's just no opportunity for people to just be willing to learn and accept that reality is reality. And it's getting worse, and it's making me mental. So, oh, God, thanks for listening. If you have kids, hug them. If they don't like it, hug them more and brush your teeth.